Hello, and welcome to episode 3 of Catcher's Corner. Sammy, we're live this time.
Yo, do it live. Like Bill O'Reilly. Do it live, baby. You write it, we'll do it.
Like it. So, as I said, this is episode 3 of the Catcher's Corner. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all those. Please make sure download, rate, review. Tell us what you like, what you don't like. We'll keep trying to improve it for you.
Do you actually
think Tammy, we're 4 days we're like 4 days from opening day.
Do you actually think anybody's watching?
Well, I can see the number right now and it's 0.
Oh, okay.
So we'll see how that goes as we go through.
Yeah, man. I'm excited. 4 days, ready to go. We just had our the league that we're a part of. We had our draft last week. I'm pretty stoked. You know?
Yeah, man. I'm ready. I've put a lot of time in this offseason, so it's nice to like have real games.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to see, like who those guys that you've been like watching, reading about, studying, whatever. It's nice to see, or it's good to have that opportunity to see like how they put it together. Right.
It's more so
notice
more so like a validation of your own kind of like feelings on guys. Like, hey,
sure.
Am I gonna strike rich on this like 24th round pick, or am I gonna completely screw up my rotation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess actually, we're gonna go right off the outline from the jump, because I didn't tell you I was gonna talk to you about this, but we've been prepping, we've been drafting. So like opening day, is there a player that you feel like you're more excited to watch, or not? Let's just give it opening week. So maybe it's a pitcher's not opening day starter, but is there somebody you've been like drafting, reading about, thinking about that you're like excited to actually see in action now?
Yeah. And I got to give you partial credit for this because you did name this person. And as I've been watching, I've been getting more sucked into the hype. Trevor Rogers, man. Like I'm seeing, like I watched his 2020 video like over and over, dude. And I was watching it with my brother because we were prepping for the draft. He was like, dude, he looks like a baby version of Randy Johnson. I was just looking at it and I was like, holy crap. Just everything, all the other stuff, like the stuff that you were sending me about comps to his changeup, and just the delivery. I like it. The stuff is there. Like, I'm just so excited about seeing where he's going to go. Considering that he had exposure last year, which hypothetically or hopefully leads to some real gains this year. I'm really excited to see him pitch. And the Marlins are starting to have a track record, man, of developing young arms. It's really exciting to kind of see where they take this guy.
And I will say that, I knew about Trevor Rogers, but Ray Butler, who is the founder of Prospects 365, wrote an article about him, which was the first time I like really read up on him more than just like knowing that he was a raw, talented Marlins pitcher. And that got me to read more into him. And then we were talking about it. I passed that on, that information on to you when I said that Trevor Rogers was going to be better than Sixto Sanchez.
I'm not going to. I was actually, after I watched after the first couple times of watching the video and just seeing the explosiveness on the fastball and just the way he was making really good hitters look bad. Like he had his start against Atlanta where he literally K'd Freddie Freeman twice and made him look terrible. And Freddie Freeman is one of the best hitters in baseball, right? So to make him look bad was just like, whoa. And then I was just like, I've got to keep my enthusiasm really in check because then Eric might get a hold of this and be like, let me take him before I do. So I was like, all right, just keep him in the wraps, bro.
Yeah. No, listen, I had already dug. I'm happy I got the guys I got in our league, but like when I spent months writing about Tyler Mahle and Ryan Yarborough, and it's like
you're predisposed to have to go get
I gotta take it. And that's the things where like,
bro, you can't put out an article and just be like, I have no shares of this guy whatsoever.
Yeah. And that was why, like, also in our league, and we're in an OPS league instead of average. So like that's why I took Kike at the end of drafts. Like I've been talking about Kike and how he looks good in the leadoff role and how they're gonna just get him constant at bats.
Yep.
And his batting average is always hit or miss, but he's got pop, and if he's gonna be hitting at the top of the lineup. So, I guess for me, the guy is like Mahle. I mean, I've talked about Tyler Mahle. I've done all the videos about Tyler Mahle. Like if he doesn't hit this year, it's kind of like, what have I been watching? What have I been kind of like looking into? So I'm excited to see him pitch. And then, you get into like these random arguments. Like, listen, I didn't even consider myself a Rowdy Tellez guy. And then we were talking to another guy in our league who was saying that, like, Jesus Aguilar and
I'm not gonna lie,
Yuli Gurriel are better. And I was like, all right, now I guess I'm a Rowdy Tellez guy.
He's like the Grinch of fantasy sports, though. I think he just like purposely likes to go after you because you're the established fantasy writer. So he's like, I have to kind of push back on this, and I know more than this guy.
And I don't knock him for it. I would do the exact same thing. But I'm just like, that's where you get to in the beginning of the season, where you're like, listen, I guess now I'm a Rowdy Tellez backer. I'm on the bandwagon. I drew that line in the sand, so now I'm hoping that he does well at the start of the year.
He kills it, so you can come back and say, "See, I told you so."
Yeah,
I get it.
So the premise of today's episode is kind of based on what we just were talking about. So we're going to look at some spring stats to the extent of, all right, these pitchers are off to good starts. Sammy and I watched them on MLB TV. We watched some of the spring starts as much as we could. And based on watching it, do we believe in the hot starts of the spring? Do we think there's anything there or not? Big shout out to Mike Kurland, who puts together the spring training lineup tracker and had all the spring training stats. So all the stats you get from this episode, it's from Mike Kurland. But before we get into our first guy, Sammy.
Mm-hmm.
So our first guy is Dalton Jeffries, the A's pitcher.
By the way, doesn't he sound like a villain in like a Patrick Swayze movie?
I was gonna say he's like a British Bond villain, Dalton Jeffries.
That too, like Dalton Jeffries, Patrick Swayze, Roadhouse, like kind of.
Yeah, that makes
James Bond
makes me like him even more. Yeah. But how hard is it to find this dude's spring outings? Like, he has thrown 18 innings this spring, and I can watch one of them.
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to watch. I had to go back literally outside of the one that he had recently. Like, I couldn't find anything except for that 2-inning start he had last year.
Yeah,
where he got lit up. So it wasn't really much. It was only 2 innings. So I'm like, okay, what am I actually watching?
Yeah. And this is, I mean, you and I have been talking about it, but like, this is a big problem with Major League Baseball, right? Like I can watch NBA Summer League highlights of like a third string point guard who hit 3 threes in a row, and it's all over social media. And like, this dude was a 37th overall pick. Like, he's not a bum. He's thrown 18 innings over the spring and has looked good. And I can't find anywhere to watch them because all the games he started were in stadiums where it wasn't televised. So even with an MLB TV package, like I can't even go back and watch those games.
Right. No, yeah, it's I think it's something that MLB can use to further the game. I think, incorporating a lot of the, graphic stuff into their highlights, I think would also help. But yeah, I mean, also like, it's just, I hate the catcher's angle, the catcher cam. Like, I hate it. Like I'm so predisposed to seeing.
Which you say as a catcher, you're like, I hate it.
I know it's different. Like, I can literally see if I'm playing, I can literally see it. But like, if we're trying to like judge, movement and things like that, it's really hard to get a gauge on the kind of movement if you're just all you have is the home plate cam and you don't have the center field cam where you can see from behind the pitcher. Like, I think that's something that's also an issue too. I think multiple angles would be nice, but these are minor, like, small ballparks that.
Right, and then you have those ballparks where it's like it's not even really center field; it's like the camera from left center field, and you're like, I don't know what pitch that is really.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of times, people that don't really watch baseball are like, "How's that a strike? That was way inside." Like, the camera is actually in place in different places.
Right, but there are things like that where it's like the barriers to access that are a problem for baseball. Like, it shouldn't be that hard to find highlights. It shouldn't be that hard to see good young players doing things well. Like that should be a basic.
Absolutely.
And also there should be a standardization of like the content that we get. So like we get that camera angle. We like that camera angle. But then again, the NFL does that crap too, where they throw in like those weird cameras that are like running up and down the field. And we're like, nobody needs that.
Can you imagine just like, a home run being knocked down by a camera on a line in center field.
Listen, it was
The new Jeffrey Meyer.
It would be amazing. Yeah, what are you gonna? It's like that's like when Tampa Bay had the dome and you'd hit a pop fly and it would hit
the catwalk,
the catwalk.
Yeah, it's just so weird.
So Dalton Jeffries is competing for the fifth spot on the A's. We talked about last time. We talked about like whether that would be AJ Puck or not, and you and I both kind of thought Puck would wind up in the bullpen. But so far in spring, Dalton Jeffries has thrown 18 innings. He's given up 10 hits. He has a 1.50 ERA. And his strikeout per 9, because we don't have strikeout percentage, his strikeout per 9 is 12. All pretty good numbers.
Yeah.
And the key for me, again, because we discussed this, except for the highlights from the Rockies game where he struck out 7 Rockies, and you can watch the strikeouts, but you can't watch the full game. Right. You can watch the first inning of his start against the Dodgers, and the key in there is that he throws this nasty slider that strikes out Mookie Betts. And the issue with Jeffries had been that he was a fastball changeup dude. And the changeup is like a power changeup, so it's more like a sinker. But that was it. And there was everybody was kind of saying he has no third pitch. He's got good command. I mean, that slider is a third pitch. If he can command that well, and he apparently has been from reading what the beat writers are saying, and then obviously watching that start. I mean, if he can command that, that's 3 really good pitches, and that slider had hard bite that he threw to Mookie Betts.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this. I think I did like him, but there were some issues that I had with him. Was that that. I've never been a big fan of guys that have that kind of upright, delivery, so to speak, that kind of finish up high. I've been more of the traditional kind of leg kick over the top, kind of following through and finishing off the mound. But you mentioned, and you said this, like the delivery was so repeatable that I started to notice that when guys got in longer counts, and this is probably true of every hitter, right? But I think it happened quicker for him that guys just got into the rhythm of when he steps and when the ball's about to be released. Like they've been able to, I feel like that because it's so repeatable, right? There's no kind of variation or anything different in the delivery like that. I feel like hitters may have, or maybe second time through the order, are just going to get on top of that. And then I started to see a lot better contact. So on those, further down into the at bat.
So talk to me about why, because a lot of times when we talk about pitching, we say oh, he has an easy, repeatable delivery as a good thing,
right?
So why are you hesitant about a repeatable delivery?
Because it's all the game. The guys are not. Baseball is such a reactionary sport, right? The time in which they have to react to a pitch is so limited, right? They're not deciphering. They're picking up the baseball when it's up here, right? Wherever it is. Oh, let me get me in the camera, right? Wherever it is. And if somebody has a repeatable delivery, to me, it just makes that timing mechanism for them much easier to kind of get down and stay on top of. And, I noticed this a long time ago when I was trying to understand why Clayton Kershaw was so good, right? And it dawned on me that leg plant, the way he kind of drops the leg, and you think as a hitter that it's dropping, but he kind of subtly picks it up a little bit and then drops it. Just that little bit of timing threw all these guys off. And that kind of thing is a huge deal, right? So if you don't have overpowering stuff and you can't vary your timing and give them a little wrinkle in terms of, messing with their timing mechanism, I worry a little bit about repeatability, about being able to consistently get guys out within a game, right? You may be able to get through it first time through, but what worries me is, at bats that, take longer than 3 or 4 pitches, and then second and third time through the order. That kind of really scares me with guys that have repeatable delivery. Obviously, it's great if you want somebody to kind of not give out free passes. It makes things easier for a pitcher to have repeatable delivery, but on the con side, it makes it a little bit easier for hitters to time and stay on top of.
Sure. So I like what you're pointing out is the difference between there's easy, repeatable delivery in terms of mechanics. And that's what we want, right? Because we want pitchers who can find the balance point, have a consistent release point on their pitches, and they can repeat those mechanics, because then that usually leads for more consistent success. Right? You find your mechanics, you find that consistency.
Right.
But what you're suggesting is that easy, repeatable doesn't have to be in terms of the timing. Right. And that we know that when runners are on base, pitchers often, vary their looks or hold the ball for longer and all that sort of stuff to mess with the runner's timing and also the hitter's timing.
Right.
And what you're talking about is the fact that maybe as a young pitcher, he's not, varying the time to the plate in a way that might
it's just so
throw off some hitters.
It's so repeatable that if you're in the box, you're just going to know when that's coming out of his hand, right? And hey, all you have to do is kind of adjust to whether it's a breaking ball or a fastball, right? And counts kind of dictate what he might throw here, right? Like that's what game planning is. I guarantee you, if he figured out that, hey, if I pick up my leg and just paused for like a nanosecond and then went, I guarantee you, like that would throw so many guys. He probably can incorporate that maybe into a second turn, but it scares me a little bit.
And you see pitchers do that more with age. Like, listen, Marcus Stroman, I don't remember him being that type of dude, and now you see him pausing in the back step. You see him pausing on the leg lift. You see him pausing all the time. I mean, he's Johnny Cuetoing all over the mound.
Right.
So sure, maybe that's something that Jeffries learns as he gets into the league a little bit more.
Possible.
What I like is I think that the power change, slider, fastball is a good baseline for success for a guy who has always shown positive control or good control metrics throughout the minor leagues on a good team in a pitcher's ballpark. And his ADP right now is 373. So he's basically free at the end of drafts.
Yeah.
I don't know that you got to run out and get him in like a 12-team league right now. Again, we talked about this, when we talked about AJ Puck. The A's start with the Astros, the Dodgers, and then back to the Astros again. So like you're not starting him in there.
Yeah,
but I definitely think you got to watch out
how long he's gonna actually be. If he actually gets the rotation spot, he's only filling in for Mike Fiers. So like we don't know how long his stay in the rotation is gonna actually be.
True. And my response to that is it's Mike Fiers. And if a 37th overall pick seems to have it clicking, I think the A's are going to go with that.
Yeah, I mean, and they tend to skew towards the young guys more.
Yeah. Let's talk about another young arm. We watched Tarek Skubal face Corey Kluber on the 23rd. The Tigers played at the Yankees. Let's talk about Skubal first. I know you at one point were super excited about him. What did you see in that start?
In the Kluber start, I mean, I just didn't think he had real good command of his fastball.
Well, you're talking Kluber now?
No, I'm talking Skubal.
Okay, go for it. It's like Skubal Kluber. It confused me.
It sounds like a cereal name or something.
Yeah. All right, you're talking Skubal. Go for it.
Yeah. Skubal snacks or whatever.
Yeah.
It just like was all over the place with his fastball. So like no fastball command. And then when he threw his slider, I just couldn't stop thinking about how hittable it was. Like it's a flat, like Mike Tauchman didn't hit a home run all of last year, right? Like Mike Tauchman did not hit one home run in all of 2020. And he took Skubal out on that slider in his first at bat on the first slider that he saw, deposited in like pulled down like in the right field, easy home run. And I kept seeing him throw this slider, and I'm like, this slider just sits belt high on all of these guys. Like, and if it doesn't have, I don't think it has enough velocity and it doesn't have enough downward tilt for it to continuously be effective. Like, I think there's more chances he hangs it and leaves it in a hittable spot than he does get strikeouts with it. Like, so that plus the inefficiency with his fastball, kind of pulled me off. I know, like, before the draft, I was like, I have to get Tariq Skubal. Like, I have to. Like, and then seeing that start, I was like, oh, I'm glad I didn't get him. Because I'm glad I missed out.
I hear you. I mean, I think that there's a lot of raw talent there. I mean, like in that game, he was pumping. He was sitting 94, 95 and was touching 97 from the left side with a fastball.
Yeah, well, that's why I saw last year him throwing like 97, 98. And in this start, I was seeing 94, 95, and that's a huge difference. Right? Like,
yeah, well, I mean, he averaged 94.4 last year. So, there were some games where he was running it up. He was running it up more. And the slider, like I'm looking at the metrics right now. The slider was a fine pitch for him last year, 14.3% swinging strike rate, 28.6 CSW, which is called strikes plus swinging strikes. It was fine, but like you mentioned, the command of it is a problem. And it was a problem in that game. I mean, he was not able to command the off-speed pitches. And if you're not able to command the off-speed pitches, then it becomes hard. I mean, guys don't have to swing at that.
Yeah.
And if they're not going to offer at that, then they're sitting on your fastball.
Yeah. And plus you got to add in like the fact that workload concerns, you're not going to get, you'd be lucky if you got 100 innings this year out of him. Like, is the inefficiency going to lead to quick hooks? That kind of thing. I definitely think he's a 2022 kind of, like, depending on how this year goes, 2022 is a better year to kind of think about pulling the trigger on him. But who knows, man? Yeah. We can literally go out there opening day and be like, I was just messing around in spring training. Here I am.
Sure. And I think what you're getting at is the point of, like, the talent is there, the control that we saw in that game was iffy. Right now on the spring, he has a 1.59 ERA.
How's that possible?
In 17 innings, he's given up only 11 hits, and he has 9.5 K per nine.
How many walks?
That's where.
Okay.
That's where that's not. Actually, you know what? Give me 1 second. I'll pull that up because I have Mike's stats ready. I will say that the walk percentage last year on the changeup and the slider were not bad. I mean, he has 6.7 walk percentage or ball percentage on the slider, which is not bad. And that's way better than what we were seeing in this one particular start. So I think he's just going to be a guy who, if the command is working and if he's getting those breaking pitches in the zone, then you might see some good starts because the raw talent is there. But if he's pitching like in the Yankee game, it's just going to be a little bit of a roller coaster.
Nine
walks in
17
in 17 innings. Yeah, I mean, it's not ideal, but again, because he's not giving up a lot of hits, he still has a 1.18 WHIP over the spring.
It kind of speaks to our control issues, right? Like that's part of it. Like you expect like the hits to kind of get up there. Like that's a regression stat, in my opinion. Like, and if he couples that with what he's doing with the inefficiency, what it looked like to us was real. Like that was real, right?
Yes.
So
I mean, I think so. And here's the one thing I will say. I mean, right now he's going pick 280. That's high.
Right.
I was in before because I think the raw talent is there, and I was hesitant after the Yankee game, and then I looked at his opening schedule, and his first four starts. And again, it depends on, obviously how they lock in the rotation, if there's rainouts, whatever. But it looks like Skubal will open the season with Cleveland, and then Oakland, and then Pittsburgh.
That outside of the Pittsburgh, that's a tough schedule.
Cleveland this year?
I think Cleveland's still decent offensively. Franmil, Jose.
So?
Yeah, I don't think. Listen, Cleveland always finds a way to stay decent. Maybe not this year, but they still have legitimate hitters in that lineup.
Sure. I guess that'll be a test. I mean, they were not a phenomenal offense last
it's
year.
not like he's facing his own team. If he was facing Detroit Tigers or something, then I'd be like, all right.
Sure. I kind of like that. I kind of like that schedule for him though. I guess we'll see.
Is it in Oakland?
It's in Oakland.
Okay.
I'm not buying into Cleveland that much this year. They were an okay offense last year and then lost Lindor. So I think there's obviously a step back. The Pittsburgh offense we know is going to be bad. And the Oakland offense is fine, but that's a pitcher's park. Right. So it's not a bad schedule. And, looking at the baseball reference number on his opponent quality in the spring, his opponent quality is at 8 out of 10, which it basically equates to he was facing AAA competition. So that could explain a little bit of why he's, able to get away with some of the command issues. But also AAA competition across the board in spring training is better than what some of these other dudes are facing, right? Like Dalton Jeffries was between AA and AAA. So, I'm not bullish on Skubal, but I'm intrigued enough that if he's available in a league, he's on my watch list. If somebody cuts him early.
Yeah, any lefty throwing 97, 98, you have to be intrigued.
Yeah. But the guy across from him in that start, I was super excited about too, because I heard really good things about how Kluber looked, and the stats were good. I mean, right now, even the stats are good. He has 13 innings pitched, 10 hits, 2.77 ERA, 9.7 K per nine. I just thought he looked terrible in that start. He could not control a breaking pitch at all. And we know that's huge for him because he throws that cutter instead of a traditional four seam. It comes in at 92. He's never been a great fastball pitcher like most of those Indians' arms. Mm-hmm. And he's been able to get by with the off-speed pitches. And they were just missing the zone. I mean, it wasn't even close. It wasn't like he was nibbling and it just wasn't, finding the zone. I mean, he was in the left-handed batter's box to right-handed pitchers. And I'm rooting for him because I think last year's injuries were, unfortunate. And I'd like to see him, even though he's on the Yankees, I'd like to see him do well. But if those off-speed pitches aren't on, he's going to get hit around because that fastball just is not good and has not really been good.
Yeah, you can't sit on that. You can sit on that fastball if you're a hitter.
Yeah. And you're a Yankee fan, so what did you think?
I'm actually the Yankees have never been good at these kind of retread veterans, like the J.A. Haps, and they've never hit on these kinds of pitchers before. They just haven't. I'm not going to compound everything that you just said. Obviously, I agree with you. I'm not a big fan. I'm not a big fan specifically because you don't know what you're getting innings wise. We have no idea how he's going to hold up for an entire season. You can definitely bake in, what is he at, a 155 ADP? I feel like that's way too early for somebody that you have no idea how many starts you're going to get out of him. To me, that's just taking a risk. Where there's other options where you can kind of say to yourself, hey, I can bank on X amount of starts, X amount of innings, specifically with the environment that we're in terms of workload concerns for starters. I think the Yankees, who have a history of just being cautiously guarding their players, right? With this kind of, injury profile, we have no idea what we're going to get.
Let me throw something out there, and you tell me as a Yankee fan if I'm being a hater or if there's something valid in what I'm saying. The Yankees haven't been able to develop these veteran retreads or been able to take a guy like Kluber or like what the Giants did with Kevin Gausman last year, where they took a guy who had raw talent and they made him effective. The Yankees haven't been able to do that because the Yankees don't develop pitching well.
I mean, sure. I mean, I agree with that. We haven't really seen. Masahiro Tanaka was not a developmental pitcher. They haven't.
There's Cole.
Yeah, I mean, Cole wasn't a development. None of their Paxton wasn't. None of these guys that they've brought in have, flourished. And even the guys that were supposed to be, I forgot the guy's name from a few years ago, that they were hyping up and just didn't pan out. But like all of the guys, even if you go back to like the Phil Hugheses of the world, remember Phil Hughes was supposed to be the next coming of Roger Clemens, Baby Rocket, like that's what they called him. Like, and I mean, we're going way back. Like Phil Hughes is like, but like it's a history that they have not developed young. I don't know if like Domingo Germán even counts because he's like a little bit older than, most of the younger pitchers, right? Like he hasn't really...
I would say if he hits, he and like Davy Garcia, if they hit, would be the ones who are like, right. You develop that. Obviously, Jordan Montgomery too, he's been battling injuries, so who really knows?
Right. I mean, we have not yet seen like a legit starter come up through the Yankee farm system, and that's fair game because they haven't been able to develop these guys in forever.
I mean, the one guy that we are forgetting, and I think we're just forgetting it also to the extent because he's been hurt. But I mean, there's still Severino.
Oh, Severino's the only one, right? No, Severino, right? If there was one guy, it would be him. Completely forgot about him. But he would be the only one in the last maybe decade plus that you can say, like, that's a legit starter. That's a guy that developed from start to finish. Like, they didn't get him from an organization like the Mets getting Syndergaard from Toronto. Like, they got him. They drafted him. They built him. They developed him. He's here. That's the only person I can come up with. So it's fair.
We had these conversations a little bit, too, like when Sonny Gray left and made the comments about, like, not really enjoying the way that his pitching was handled, what he was being forced to throw, et cetera. And, you start to see these teams like the Giants, like the Astros, like the Marlins actually a little bit now that you're talking about, like the Reds because they've got, they're working with Driveline. Like you're starting to see these teams emerge who are able to develop pitching. And when they get a veteran who has some talent and maybe hasn't figured it out, you're like, oh, this is a spot for them. Which is why like people were excited about Aaron Sanchez and Anthony DeSclafani going to the Giants. And I just wonder if like we're excited about Kluber and Taillon because they have talent. Maybe the Yankees aren't the best place for that talent to flourish.
Well, we're going to see. That's a good point because we're going to see now with Taillon, right? Like we saw what happened when Cole left to go to Houston, right? The change in the philosophy, how that kind of unlocked his skills, right? If Taillon comes here and doesn't succeed, like, is it more of an indictment on the Yankees' ability to kind of, unlock the potential of these pitchers? Like, we'll see.
Maybe. Yeah. And I'll say, just to put a pin in the Kluber discussion, I mean, listen, I think that we know that he has elite starter upside, and we know that he's a slow starter. So, we still don't want to over rely on a couple spring training starts. But we're not looking at the stats. We're looking at the command of his pitches. And I will just say, I mean, his first 4 starts, looking at his schedule right now, he faces Toronto, Tampa, Toronto, and Atlanta.
That's brutal.
So if he is off, or if he's slow starting at the beginning, those could be some bad starts.
Brutal.
So don't avoid him in your drafts. The talent and the upside is there, but I mean, I'm not like, I have to be okay. I have to be okay with him riding on my bench for a little bit during those starts. Or you know what? Maybe I pounce. Maybe somebody just thinks
155. Yeah. That's. I feel
maybe better pounce when somebody cuts him. If he starts slow and those first 4 starts are bad and people are just like Kluber doesn't have it, then maybe he puts it together in May, June like he always does.
Yeah, once we get some kind of baseline and we see some of the where the weaknesses are, and we can kind of make a determination as is this reboundable or is this something that's just going to snowball from here?
Now a veteran starter that I am in on is Charlie Morton.
Charlie.
And
good old Charlie.
Listen, I think people are forgetting that like he was a 4th round pick last year for the Rays. Like everybody was in on him in like the 30s, 40 range overall. And he was hurt last year. and was not effective early on. Looked good in the playoffs. Velocity was back up. Now he's throwing 95 again in the preseason in spring training. He's thrown 10.1 innings, given up 9 hits, no earned runs, and has a 7.8 K per 9. But again, I don't really care about that. I care that he's healthy and the velocity is up. And, he's going at pick 108 right now. And I'm in on that because that's a good team, and he's a very good pitcher when he's on.
Yeah, I definitely think that this is one of those guys where, like, the starts and stops, especially when you're an older pitcher, like the stops and starts of COVID and just like the spring training stops and start, like all that really kind of hampered his 2020. This is a dude from 2017 to like 2019 had a low to mid 3 ERA, a 1.08 to 1.116 WHIP, like was striking out 200 guys a year, and then last year just 1.39 WHIP, a 4 points. Like it wasn't part of his profile, right? Like
it's not him.
Yeah. So like I think this is one of those cases where it's clearly like, all right, we're junking 2020. Like 2020 is junk, and we're gonna, kind of, hey, but that opens up a buying opportunity for, finding really good starting pitching, at a discount. And I think there's not really much that we need to say. Like I agree. I was in on Charlie Morton. I didn't get a chance to grab him, but definitely was somebody who was on my radar as somebody who can be a valuable piece in rotation.
And I think, the key thing when I watched his start in spring against the Blue Jays, and it wasn't always pretty, except for, again, the velocity being on. Right. But when Charlie Morton is on, he's like a 50% ground ball pitcher. And he's a 50% ground ball pitcher that now has Freddie Freeman at first, Ozzie Albies at second, Dansby Swanson at short, and, Austin Riley isn't a great third baseman. But he was getting out of jams in that Blue Jays start because he's given up ground balls on the sinker, on the slider, and then they're just turning double plays. And it's like, if he's not going to be the K guy that he was before, and I think he can be, I think he's going to get wins, and he's got a good defense behind him. And I'm betting on the bounce back. And these spring numbers are with an opponent quality of 8.3, which is essentially a high AAA quality. So way better than any of the other guys we've been talking about right now.
Yeah, no, definitely somebody, and I love pitchers that don't. Obviously, this goes without saying. We love pitchers that don't walk people, right?
Yes.
And he is that guy. Junk 2020. Take the discount. Go win a chip.
How do you feel about Marcus Stroman? He's thrown 18.1 innings this spring, 18 hits, 3.44 ERA, 8.3 K per 9. But a super interesting 20-3 strikeout to walk ratio.
Dude, I feel like, I like Stroman because I think he's a great ambassador for baseball. I think he's a smart guy. I think he can definitely push the game to places where it needs to go in terms of his ambassadorship. But he's like I feel like he's been so hyped. Like he's talked about but he's been such an average pitcher. Like I feel like we haven't seen the best of him, and like I keep wondering why people are like just giving him so much rope. But if he's developed this changeup that you're talking about that he's going to use, I didn't realize how bad he was against lefties. If he's diversifying the arsenal and adding a new wrinkle that can neutralize lefties, who have been his biggest thorn in his side, then. Maybe it opens the door to some new ground for him. I just need to see if he's going to make a committed effort during the season to use that changeup, and is it going to revert back to what he's been doing in the past, which is basically like fastball, inside, like just running fastballs away.
And that slider.
Yeah. So yeah.
I hear you. Listen, I think. I mean, he has been vocal about that split. It's a split change, right?
Right.
So it has far more of a sharp downward bite than a normal changeup would. He's been throwing it, relatively hard around like 87, 88 on that split change. And he's been vocal about going away from the changeup that he had before, but also going away from the sinker and being more of a four-seamer guy. So he has overhauled his pitch mix pretty drastically from cutter, slider, sinker, and now he's slider, four-seam, changeup. And as you were talking about, like lefties hit 290 off of him in 2019. So having this kind of split change, which is filthy. I mean, I've seen it a lot. I've watched a couple of his starts this spring, and it looks good. And I think it could be like a real massive pitch for him. I don't know that we're ever going to be like, oh my God, Marcus Stroman, he's a 30% strikeout guy. Yeah. But I think that, the slider has always been a good pitch for him, and especially for getting strikes. Strikeout. Slider has always been a good strikeout pitch for him. I think that this now gives him a strikeout pitch against lefties, but I think it also just allows him to diversify the repertoire a little bit so that people aren't just sitting on one pitch. Right. And the sinker was bad too, man. So like, in addition to just getting a good pitch to strike out lefties, like going to the four seam and going away from the sinker, I think is good. The sinker last year had a 5.35 deserved ERA and had a 3.06 batting average against. Like, that's not a good pitch.
Yeah,
so
he's never been a guy that can keep guys off base, man. Like, I just don't understand. Like, he's not an overpowering guy. He's kind of in that 7 to mid 7 K per nine kind of range, and at a 1.2 to 1.3 whip, like that's where he is. Like, it's just like, I just don't understand. Like, I don't get, not the hype, because there's no hype. He's like 30 years old. So I don't get what's so intriguing, I guess.
I think I hear you. I think it's just buying in
to diversity
on the new pitches.
On the new pitch. I will say, I think he's outside of 2018 and last year, like, he has been someone you can definitely count on to give you 30 starts.
Sure. Yes. And when we know we need innings this year, I just think he's another guy we maybe need to look at as a new pitcher. I mean, he has 2 new pitches. He's overhauled that he's throwing a lot in the spring starts. He's overhauled his pitch mix, and I think that you could see a strikeout per 9 hovering around 9. He's got.
You think that lofty of a jump?
Yeah, I do. I mean, like a 9. I mean, the slider was a huge whiff pitch for him. I mean, it had a 35.3 whiff percentage, a 16.7 swinging strike rate, and the sinker and the cutter were poop when it comes to swinging strikes. Right. So if he still has that slider and he has another strike pitch in the split change, and he goes to the fastball, I mean, you're looking at like getting rid of your 2 worst pitches and pairing pitches better with your best pitch, right? Because a split change would break in the opposite direction of the slider, so he'd be able to kind of have the triangle in the zone of the four seam up at the top, the slider down and in.
What took him so long?
I don't know. Who knows? I mean, who knows? Maybe he's been experimenting with a bunch of different things.
Let me spend 5 years of being mediocre. Let me change something. Like, come on.
But listen, who knows? Sometimes guys think things are going to work, and they keep at it, and then they don't work, and then they decide to scrap it. And
it took your tweet. That's what it took. It took your tweet.
Yeah. Listen, Marcus Stroman is very active on Twitter, and I'm
happy
about it.
Like us, we like you. We
do like you. We like you, Marcus.
We like your new pitch mix.
Let's talk about another. Let's combine 2 right here so we can move through it a little bit. Tell me which of these NL East pitchers you are more in on. Zach Eflin, who's thrown 6 innings this spring, 2 hits, no earned runs, 10.5 K per 9, or Pablo Lopez.
I knew it.
13.2 innings pitched, 13 hits, 2.63 ERA, 5.9 K per 9. You had to pick one.
I'll go Eflin.
Yeah.
And I can honestly say that I was probably up until a couple days ago, I was probably more of a Pablo Lopez guy. But like just seeing some of the changes on Eflin and just seeing the natural progression of where he's going. I think there's more. I obviously don't like the ballpark, but I think having that power sinker at 95, 96. You know who he reminded me of, dude, in terms of like Arsenal? Nate Eovaldi.
You're just trying to get me to like Zach Eflin.
I'm not, but like I hate the fact that it reminds, like, because I hate Nate. Hate is a strong word. I would never own Nate Eovaldi on my team ever. But it reminded me of the same kind of like, hey, that hard 95, plus two seam sinking fastball, right? And then just a nice breaking ball like that curveball that he's working on. It kind of reminded me of a similar profile.
I think you're still in that Nate Eovaldi Yankees where you're like, he broke your heart, or you were like, get him off my team.
Everywhere. He's broken everybody's heart. What are you talking about?
But I just mean in terms of that pitch mix, because you're right that was Nate Eovaldi for a long time. But then he made a change too in terms of going to the cutter, adding a splitter, kind of getting away from that like that hard soft sink. And now there's a more kind of like pronounced downward bite on the splitter that he has, and then four seamer cutter. And he still throws that.
No, you're gonna make me hurl. We're not gonna talk about Eovaldi anymore. We're gonna
stay. You like Eflin?
Oh, I like that. Like I said, I didn't like before until I started seeing. And I think what we talked about before was that this curveball could be a game changer for him. I did watch a start last year against the Braves where he got 8 strikeouts, 6 of them were on that curveball. So if he, I think a little troublesome what you mentioned was that he's kind of getting away from the curveball and kind of sticking with a slider that isn't as effective. I don't know if that's just somebody who's tinkering during spring training. But if the curveball is going to be a consistent part of his arsenal, I think the two complement each other very well because they hit different quadrants of the plate. And I think they're a great mix. They play off each other very well. I think he's a little bit older than Pablo. I'm not sure. I think he may be a little bit further along in terms of understanding how to pitch.
So Eflin is 26 years old.
Yeah.
And Pablo is 25. So yeah.
Right. But I mean, in terms of like years in the majors, like I don't know if Eflin's been around.
Yeah, he's been around. I think he's been around a little longer.
But yeah, so maybe he's a little bit further along his understanding of what works for him and what he needs to do to get him to be effective. Which
is why it's frustrating to me that he again, and you said it, I'll repeat it again. We're trying to go not just off stats, but off of actual game footage. But we're also aware that there's spring training games and guys are definitely working on things. Right. But I was upset that he was using that slider more than the curveball in that start. And maybe he was working on that slider because it has potential, but it's super inconsistent. And it was the spring training start against the Tigers, and it got drilled a bunch. Like he left it up a lot and it got drilled. And I don't know why he's not using the curve more. And I know that people are like calling for him to use the curve more. And, I'm sure there's a reason why he's currently not. And maybe again, he will when the regular season starts.
Dude, if he's a big dude, about it, you should put out a tweet. Maybe he's on Twitter. Maybe you could amass like a following of like maybe you can be like the pitching guru instead of the pitching ninja, the pitching guru.
Well, I'll slowly work on that.
Let's do that.
I just think where he's going right now 174. The draft cost isn't necessarily too high, but Marcus Stroman is at 177. Jose Urquidy, who I really like, is at 183. Yep. Soroka, who is intriguing, is at 184. Now Carlos Carrasco is down to 187 because of the hamstring injury, but it's like if he's back, I mean, when he comes back, I'm fine with Eflin. I just don't know until I see that conscious pitch mix change. I don't know that I'm fully in, but I'm fully in on Pablo Lopez. I just really like Pablo Lopez. I thought he made some really good changes last year. Eno Saris was pumping him up for a while, and the results weren't there. But you trusted the stuff and the metrics, and the stuff ratings, the command plus, all that sort of stuff that Eno was talking about.
Right.
And he has a fastball with some natural cut. Throws it at 94. His changeup is another good pitch. I mean, listen, this is another Marlins dude with a good changeup. I mean, we talked about Sixto. We talked about Trevor Rogers. Like, they develop. That is clearly a pitch that they develop through their minor league system. And Pablo Lopez is another guy with a good changeup. And now he married his breaking pitches in the offseason. So he was throwing a sinker last year as his third pitch, which wasn't really great, and he throws it in the exact same part of the plate as the changeup. And now they tried to get him to throw a slider, but that wasn't really working, so he throws a slurve.
Right.
And he throws the slurve at 82, 83, so it has a little bit of the velo of a slower slider.
Right.
And it attacks down and in on lefties, which is a part of the plate that he wasn't really attacking with when he just had the four-seam fastball and the changeup.
Right.
So I was in on him before, and I'm in on him with the change, and I think he's looked good in the spring. And I'm a big Pablo Lopez backer.
All right. I guess me and you went in different routes, so we're going to see at the end of the year where each stands. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, a little gentleman's bet.
Yeah.
Let's
do it.
Talk to me about another dude you love who we've gone in different directions on. But tell me why you like Sean Manaea so much.
Oh boy. Yeah, first off, I will say that Sean Manaea won me a fantasy championship in 2019.
Sure. So he's in your heart. He's got a place in your heart.
Picked him up as soon as he came off the IL, right? Or the DL at that time, whatever it was called. He went 5-0 the rest of the season and was striking out a bunch of guys. And he was throwing. What really struck out to me was he threw 94 at that point in the year, 1990 in 2019. So I was like, oh wow, he's throwing a lot harder than I remember Sean Manaea throwing. So that kind of stuck with me. It was like, this dude's pretty good because he was controlling the plate, getting strikeouts, good team, good bullpen, good ballpark, good offense. It's like, this is great. Admittedly, I did not watch him last year. So researching him this year, apparently his velocity was gone last year. So this year, it seems like his velocity is back to 94. And an interesting thing that I read about him was that, he said, and I think this makes a ton of sense, that he got so used to pitching without velocity that having velocity is just like an extra clip in his chamber. So this is a guy who's really built his arsenal on not having velocity. Now you give him velocity and he knows how to use it. And I'm just in on all of it. I'm in on the ability to kind of keep the game in check, solid peripherals. I like where he is on in terms of team. His team is great. I like his team. I like the bullpen there. I like the offense there, the ballpark there. And it's just a trustworthy pitcher, in my opinion. It's just somebody that you can say, hey, he knows how to pitch. And they're a stable spot in the rotation. Somebody that I do like, I've always liked, and just seeing the talk about having his velocity back to 94 really kind of gets me amped to have him on my squad.
Yeah. Listen, I was not going to be in on him. And I think I'm coming around to your side a little bit. I will say that the velo was down last year, but the velocity was also down in 2019. The velocity in 2018 was 90.4. The velocity in 2017 was 91.7. So I don't know this new velocity that he's that he has right now, he has never been a guy who's been able to carry velocity through a season. He always kind of goes in fits and starts.
Right.
But to your point, he's learning to throw without it. Last year he had a 4.50 ERA, but if you believe in kind of like predictive metrics, he had a 3.71 FIP and a 3.77 xFIP. So like there is an argument to be made that like the predictive ERA metrics suggest that he should have done better.
Right.
So
and this is I think get about 23 or 24 or something like that. Like,
yeah, I think where he's going right now, he's really good value. He's going 244. I think that he's shown that he can be a good pitcher. I just think you have to be ready to move on.
Right.
That's all I'm going to say. I think when the velocity goes, I think you have to be ready to say
pivot.
It's a quick hook.
Pivot.
Yeah, it's a quick hook. Now, another guy I'll be real quick on, because we don't need to talk about this dude for that long, but I just want to point out, when we're talking about velocity, that Steven Matz is hitting 95 right now with the Blue Jays. In 15.1 innings this spring, he's given up 13 hits. He has a 1.76 ERA, and he has 8.8 K per nine. And I watched his start on the 20th against the Phillies. And the thing that I was super interested about, because obviously, living in New York, I've seen Steven Matz a bunch with the Mets on TV. And, he has games, and even when he was having bad seasons with the Mets, he would have games where you're like, oh, this dude has stuff.
Yeah.
Like, he's not a bad pitcher.
Yeah.
But his command is iffy. He could never get a fastball in on right-handed hitters, so the fastball was out over the plate, and would get hit around a little bit. The breaking pitches were good but ineffective. And I just I watched the start, and I don't know why I was impressed, man. Like, he was jamming righties in with 95 on the hands. The breaking pitches looked good, but then he threw this changeup to get Bryce Harper that was at 87, and normally his changeup is around 84. So maybe he's throwing this harder, kind of like we talked about with Jeffrey's power changeup now.
Yeah.
But he threw it on the inside part of the plate, belt high, on a 2-2 count because Harper was fouling off some breaking balls, and made Harper look terrible. And it was just a pitch where I was I rewound it 5 times. What the hell was that? What was that pitch?
Right.
Because I didn't know Matz had anything like that in his arsenal.
Right.
And I'm intrigued enough with that added velocity and the sense of he's always been a guy who had some raw talent. I'm by no means he's going pick 420 right now. So I'm by no means being you need to draft Steven Matz in your leagues. If you're in a draft and hold league and you can take Steven Matz and he's on your bench, you're going 50 rounds or whatever, cool, fine.
Right.
I just think maybe we shouldn't write him off is basically what I'm saying. He should be on our radar as a streamer.
Put him on
certainly not out of the gate when he gets the Yankees and then the Angels. You're not touching that.
Yeah. If you're using Yahoo, hit the star button and put him on your watch list.
And listen, that's good strategy talk for everybody.
Yeah.
If you don't use that watch list, use the damn watch list.
Yeah.
Use it.
Yeah.
Because there's so many times you read an article about a guy and you're like, oh, that made me think about him in a different way. Immediately open up whatever app you have, put him on the watch list, because hours later you may have forgotten about it. And then I always will go back to the watch list and just check how those dudes are doing.
Yeah, exactly.
Because even as plugged in as we are, and as much as you're reading Twitter, and as much as you're watching games, and as much as you're on The Athletic and whatever other sites you're using, Rotoballer, obviously you're checking it all the time. But as much as you're doing that, as much as you're doing that, there are guys who go unnoticed.
Yeah, I mean, just forget about guys too, man. I remember so many times, I've said I really like this guy, but I kind of want to wait and see how they continue to do, and forgot that guy even existed, and just lost it on the wire. So just use the damn watch list. All right,
use it.
We're the smart guys, right? Listen to us and just put them on your watch list.
So last guy for the day, he's got some helium because he won a rotation spot.
Love him.
Freddie Peralta is moving into the rotation for the Milwaukee Brewers. Currently 13.2 innings pitched over the spring, 14 hits, 3.95 ERA, but a 15.1 K per nine. His ADP has jumped up to 236. Sammy, Freddie Peralta, starter, are you in?
I've always liked this dude for some reason. I don't know why. Like, I just love his mechanics. But I just wonder, like, there was so much back and forth in the offseason about what they were going to do with Freddie Peralta. Like, one day, yeah, he's definitely getting a, and then it was like, oh, we'll see. Oh, well, I'm going to do whatever the coach wants me to do. So, like, I'm a little worried about how committed they are to him in that rotation. But I do like his stuff. Obviously, high octane fastball. I love guys. Obviously, we all like guys who can pump fastball and get guys to swing and miss on fastballs, right? Am I wrong? Does he have like a changeup? I completely forgot. Was it a changeup?
His changeup is poop. He has a curveball and a slider. And what's interesting is that sometimes people refer to it as a curveball and a slow curve because the slider and the curve really move in similar directions. Right. And the slider just bites harder. But yeah, fastball, slider, curve.
Yeah, no, I have seen Freddie Peralta. I do like him. My only concern is how committed, like I said, how committed are they to keeping him in the rotation and not moving it into the bullpen? Yeah.
And my concern is I loved him as a bullpen arm. I mean, he's a two-pitch pitcher. Like he's got the slider now, which he's been throwing in the spring, and I like it. And you know, I know it's a different pitch than the curveball, even though it has very similar movement and is thrown to the same general quadrant of the plate. But he threw the fastball 74% of the time last year, which you can get away with when you're a reliever. But fastball, curveball, slider is so right-handed hitter dominant that, like, I don't know that he can get lefties out. And that was a problem for him in 2018 when he was a starter. And he was throwing the changeup back then. And the changeup had a 264 batting average against, 441 slug. You know, he had some rough splits, some very pronounced splits, left-handed, right-handed, against left-handed, right-handed hitters, sorry. So, like, I still don't know that he has a pitch that he can use against lefties besides the fastball or the occasional backdoor curve. And I watched him pitch the spring start against the White Sox, and the amount of 3-2 counts that he got in against left-handed hitters was crazy. And it was just like 3-2 count after 3-2 count after 3-2 count because they were just like fastball, 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 fastball. They knew they were going to get it, and they were fouling it off, and they were spitting on the breaking pitches because he was throwing them under the zone. Right. And he threw this beautiful backdoor curve and struck out Moncada. But then 2 batters later, he got into a deep count against Zach Collins, and he threw a fastball on the outside part of the plate, and he hit it out of the park. Right. So it's like you have to show these guys another offering, especially when you're not going one time through the order.
Right. You know what I'm going to say here, right? You know where I'm going with this.
No.
Yeah. You just put out a tweet. Him and Marcus Stroman need to, show him the Marcus Stroman. This is what you need. This is what you need, a changeup or something that stops lefties from bashing you.
You know that, yes. I'll tell him that, and he'll be like, "Oh, random dude on Twitter." I never thought about that. Listen, I mean, like, I think we need to be clear. Like, we know that pitchers know these things. We know they have their weaknesses. They know it. But we all have played with guys too who, like, professional athletes are not immune from this. But we've played with guys who are also like, nah, I can get away with this. My stuff is good enough. My stuff is good enough. I'm okay with this. And sometimes it's not. That's not to say Freddie Peralta is that dude. We obviously don't know him. But I'm just saying, like,
it probably exists on the major league level just as it exists everywhere else.
Yeah, that he needs another pitch for me to get excited. I kind of wish he was still in the bullpen. So I'm not really in on him as a starter, and I'll wait and see if that pitch develops.
Yeah.
But we're gonna end by calling pitches, and I'm gonna let you just talk about your new love interest,
new
man crush. So another guy who won a starting spot, Aldebert Ozole with the Cubs. Sammy, tell me why you're so in.
A baby, double A. Nasty slider, great fastball, beautiful mechanics. And he won a rotation spot with an option on him. So like they could have easily sent him down and brought him back up later, but they didn't do that. They gave him a rotation spot, and he actually pummeled the Dodgers with their A lineup in the other day. So yes, to Adbert, I'll take him. I just did. I picked him up in waivers. So.
You did. I'm intrigued. I need to see that command get better. I mean, the walk rate has been high for him. But like you said, I mean, the raw stuff is there. I think that he can be good. That slider is a good pitch, but his command needs to get better, especially with a basic pitch like a fastball.
And I'm not
my concern.
I love guys that have former catchers as managers.
Sure. My concern is, you mentioned he has an option. He starts off, his first 4 starts are Milwaukee, Atlanta, Milwaukee. So like Milwaukee isn't a great offense, but it's a pretty good offense. Right. If they're firing on all cylinders. They were not a great offense last year, but if they're based on the talent in the lineup.
Keston Hira bounce back. Yeah. I get it. Yeah.
Based on the talent in the lineup, and then we know the Braves are a good offense.
Yep.
If he sputters, maybe he goes down for more seasoning. But I'm intrigued.
Yep.
And I'm just going to end this podcast because every single time I've taken the opportunity to just kind of talk about, the guys that I'm always in on.
This is like, this has been going on for years now.
And I'm going to do this because, listen, Carlos Martinez is the 3rd starter for the St. Louis Cardinals. He is locked into the rotation, and his current ADP right now is 356.
This is like the ex-girlfriend that you just can't.
He's going
every relationship moving forward.
But like, listen, he's being picked around Michael Kopech, Davy Garcia, Mitch Keller, Casey Mize. Like, this is a dude who's been very good when he's been on the mound. Another one whose command is erratic, and we don't necessarily know like how you get the Carlos Martinez start where all of a sudden he's walked 7 guys in 3 innings.
But we've seen that before.
We've seen that a whole bunch. All I'm saying is, at the end of your drafts, because again, that's where he's going right now, at the end of your drafts, if you're looking for a pitcher that you can throw on your bench and say, okay, if this clicks, I'm getting somebody who is immensely valuable. Like, I'm taking Carlos Martinez. I mean, if I just scroll up to like around 300, so this is guys going 50 some odd picks ahead of Carlos Martinez. I've got Adam Wainwright. I've got Madison Bumgarner.
That's true.
Justice Sheffield. Like, why are you taking those guys over Carlos Martinez?
I don't understand. Relative to the cost, I get it. It's worth the play. No, I get it.
I mean, he has been like, he's legitimately been an ace. And I know we throw that term out a lot, but like Carlos Martinez, when he was healthy and in the Cardinals rotation, was a fantasy ace. He's not been able to do it consistently. But again, you're not having to pay for him to do it consistently. Right. Let him do it for a little bit, and maybe you get the like 2015, 16, 18, 19. I mean, like, this is 3.01 ERA, 3.04 ERA, 3.11 ERA. Like, this is a legit.
I want to know how much Carlos Martinez is paying you to put you on the payroll.
It's a weekly stipend. Thank you very much. And it just helps me offset, my expenses living in New York City. It's very difficult.
Does he send you like Derek Jeter style gift baskets?
I do, and I do get a signed baseball, right?
Carlos, I want one if you're listening.
when his driver takes me home in the morning.
I'll hype you up too.
So yeah, Sammy, we're done talking about spring training because the next time we talk, it's going to be about real,
baby.
Live baseball games.
Opening day, I'm excited, and
opening day
here that we're going to revisit this. My offense is better than yours.
Yeah, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. I'm going to go watch some March Madness. Thanks for joining us on the Catcher's Corner again. Download on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, rate and review us. Let us know what you think about us.
Hit the subscribe button, please.
Subscribe.
Right.
We'll see everybody later.
Later, guys.